Everybody. So this is going to be the second video I'm going to be doing on my current projects. Yesterday I went over my first novel, which is the one I'm calling Tarot. That's the one I mentioned doing for the publisher. This is the second, basically the second project. I'm actually filming this video too on my last day up on my little writing retreat, my little kind of hideaway that I rented out here for the week up in northern New Hampshire. I guess somewhat coincidental because the novel that I'm working on, this other novel here that I'm about to discuss, actually takes place in northern New Hampshire. So a bit of a weird coincidence that really wasn't actually planned at all. But now that I mentioned it, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a weird thing. So what is the novel? I guess what is the novel? I'll go over that first. So this novel is a little bit different. I mentioned the one yesterday was actually originally a middle grade novel that I was working on. It's actually going to probably be different. It's actually probably just going to be more of a general fiction novel now, just because I'm getting rid of a lot of the childish elements from that story. So that one I went over yesterday, it's probably going to change now just because I'm changing the narrator and all that, and the tone is going to be a little bit darker than what I had written originally for the story. But this novel is a lit fic novel for adults. So it is a very contemporary adult novel. Takes place in northern New Hampshire, like I mentioned. It's about two gentlemen who live in a struggling mill town in New Hampshire, basically up near the Canadian border. It's a bit of a dying town. The industry is gone there, and these people, and really there's a sense of desperation that kind of hangs over the town. These two gentlemen, basically, as an outlet for them, as something basically to do, there is up north, basically, in this small town, is a small pro wrestling organization. It's, I guess, similar to maybe if you've seen the pro wrestling on TV, kind of the same thing, but it's just basically a bunch of local guys up there that just, on Friday nights, instead of going to the bars and getting drunk, they go up there and they have, I guess, like their little fight club, basically, where they basically wrestle for a couple hours, basically, a night, and with it they go to a certain school that they have there basically to train and become professional wrestlers, with the hope of perhaps one day becoming professional and leaving the town. What happens is, at the start of the story, a pro wrestling scout comes to the place and tells the people at the academy, I have one vacant spot here in this national wrestling promotion where you can get on TV and make all this money. And the two main characters basically vie with one another to get that spot. They start basically both a fictional rivalry, basically for their local promotion, like a fictional sort of fight between them that actually spills out and kind of blurs the line between reality and fiction, where they actually in real life try to sabotage one another and go to great lengths to basically destroy the other person in an attempt to get the contract and leave the small town behind. So that is what the story is about. I guess everyone's kind of wondering why the interest in that. I've always been very interested in sort of these operatic tales, ones that you'll see more, quite frankly, in opera. Like, for example, like Pagliacci, which is, if everyone's familiar with it, basically, it's about it's a tragic story. It's about a traveling troupe of actors. This gentleman basically suspects his wife is having an affair, and in the story, they actually put on a production basically where the husband and wife actually are a couple in the stage production they're doing, and the wife in the show actually is having an affair in the show, but in real life she is not, but he believes it is. And then there's a certain blend of fiction and reality with that, where it's sort of the climax of the story there, the fictional part, the storyline, and the real life sort of cross over with that. I wanted to do something very similar to that. I wanted to tell a story where what people see, like what the public sees basically as far as like a fake storyline, and what people see in reality gets blended. I wanted to do that. I also wanted to take a certain subculture that people aren't very familiar with. I figured local pro wrestling is about as niche of a subculture as you can possibly get. I did quite a bit of research into that. Had to watch a lot of videos on YouTube. Had to do a lot of research on my own into how this element sort of works, and how people end up getting scouted and becoming these big time pro wrestlers. So I want to do something on a very small subculture that takes place in a small town. And I've always wanted to tell a story about rivalry. I love it. I love stories with people that are very obsessive. The stories that you see oftentimes in films, the ones that come to mind are something like Whiplash, for example, The Novice, which came out, I think, last year, about a woman that's trying to join a collegiate rowing team. Stories where people are very, very obsessed, that give up basically everything for a goal and sort of lose part of themselves in the process. I've always enjoyed. And I've enjoyed stories of just general rivalry. Films like The Prestige, with magicians trying to one-up each other over a personal rivalry. Black Swan, with ballerinas vying for a spot. I've wanted to tell that sort of story. So what I did basically tells all that. It takes the subculture, it takes the sort of fictional storyline with reality blending. It takes the idea of rivalry, it mixes it in with a sense of small town desperation, where you get this in a lot of, like, you see this a lot, like, in Southern literature, oftentimes, where you get a sense of, like, the town and the people of the town, and the sort of the desperation of it through its main characters. You see something like, like Lee Harper, Faulkner. You see that a lot, basically, where the town basically becomes its own character. I want to do that as well, but I want to set that up in northern New England instead, just because I'm obviously familiar with the area, and doesn't get quite as much spotlight, I think, as perhaps other parts of the country do in terms of fiction. So that is what the book basically contains right there. That's sort of why I decided to do it. That's what it contains. I don't have a name for the book yet. I'm either, when I refer to it, I'll probably call it the wrestling novel, or I'll call it the small town novel. But this particular novel is the one that I've been working on the longest. So this is the one, I wouldn't say longest, but like, as far as on camera, what you see me do for Write Every Day, this is the project that you've seen the longest from me. This is what I was doing from, like, day one up through most of it. Only recently have I switched over to working on the other novel for the publisher, because I got an update from them, and my goals had to change in relation to that news. I guess a little bit of backstory on when I started it. This also, I guess, will tie into sort of my motivations for creating the YouTube channel as well. So I mentioned in yesterday's video that in 2020 I started querying my novel, the other one, the tarot novel. During the query process, obviously, you don't ever hear back from agents for a very long time, and the best general advice you're given is just work on your next novel. So I decided to kind of put this novel here into play. I was thinking about doing it for a while. I kind of started and stopped for a long time on, like, the beginning of the story, and I finally found, like, an angle to kind of cut in. So that's basically what I did. I started working on it. It was a very start and stop project I did for quite a while. Then last year, so 2021, last summer, there was, without going into really any detail, basically, there was a family emergency that I experienced with one of my relatives, and quite frankly, I went through, I guess you would call it a bout of depression. I guess you would call it. It lasted for a few weeks where I didn't have much interest in writing at all. I was very sort of just experiencing basically a good amount of blues. This happened, I think, maybe July or August. I can't remember, but it was in the middle of summertime last year, and I just did not want to write. So I gave up basically on it, and the project basically just stayed on a file on my computer. I'd done maybe half the novel I had written at that point. Maybe it's probably closer, but probably just a third. I'll say probably just about a third of the novel I'd actually written at that time. What happened was, so I stayed for about, I'd say several weeks now. For several weeks, basically, I did not write, did not get around to it. It was really the first time in my life where, since I decided I wanted to be a writer, that I stopped writing. It was the first time. It was this very, very kind of dark period for me. What had happened was that maybe that September, October, sometime there, I slowly started getting back into the process. So at the time, I had quit my critique group I was in. So I was part of several critique groups. I ended up quitting all of them, with the exception of one. I just kind of stayed on, but I skipped meetings. So I kind of, in effect, I quit, but not really. So I had done nothing with writing. I slowly started making my way back in. I started going back to that one critique group regularly. And I started just revising some of my earlier pages that I had written for this wrestling novel. What had happened was I got sort of stopped, started and stopped. I got a lot of frustration, start and stop, and it led right up through the holidays, and where I just basically stopped again. I stopped again, and that was basically where right every day this channel started. So I ended up deciding that around the new year that I wanted to begin again. That I really wanted to get the story done. I had just queried my tarot novel to the independent publisher in Australia that I mentioned. And so I decided I wanted to start getting this wrestling story done. I had to get done. This is something I wanted to do. My interest in the project always seemed to come back. So that's what I did, and that's what you've seen now, was that. So I've gone from getting the sort of, I guess, like a third half of the novel basically that I've written before done to getting the whole first draft completed, and now, as you've seen, I got the second draft completed at this point. So that's where I'm at right now. The second draft is done. Looking ahead at any kind of time frame, I'm going to say I'm hoping to have the story basically done by sometime in early fall. I mentioned that for the other. I said in yesterday's video I want the same thing for the tarot novel as well. I just want to have both stories basically done sometime in the fall, so I can start querying this one, and then just have basically a clean slate. I don't like having two projects at the same time. As I used to relish in that kind of thing. I used to love. I have very, very sort of ADD brain, so I love like switching between projects. I've not enjoyed it as much now. I very much want to just have one project. So my goal is actually to get both done, to have like nothing, and I can just sort of, I guess, come up with the next idea and the next one to go. So my goal is to have this thing basically done by early fall. Will I hit it? I have no idea. Like I said yesterday, I've got some time in my hands right now where I can chase it. I'm going to be going to my third draft now, starting in late May. I plan on setting the novel aside basically for a few weeks. I've sent it off to beta readers now, the second draft of this novel, just to get some early feedback on the structure and the characters and all that stuff. So I'm going to start picking it up probably late May, early June. 3 months to potentially do a few drafts of revisions. It's actually a lot. It's a fair amount of time, to be honest. I mean, even at like a 1 chapter a day pace, you're doing like 30 chapters of 30 chapters in a month. If you want to get this thing done by early fall, that's you need to have kind of a better pace than that, to be honest, just because it's going to take more than it's not going to be like a third draft and I'm done with this whole thing. So I can't say when, but my goal is fall. I often set these sort of stretch goals for myself to get done, and like half the time I don't get done, but at least I've gotten closer to my goal than I would if I had just set kind of a smaller, sort of like easier goal to achieve. So that's where I'm aiming for, is at some point in the fall to have both stories done, to have this wrestling story and have tarot done. But yeah, so now you actually know my project. So now when I refer to my novels, I'll refer to the wrestling novel and tarot. And when I come with a better name for the wrestling novel, I'll refer to it. For right now, I don't really have a better working title there. Yeah. So that is it. That is my other novel. And so now you know both projects. I'm going to be doing updates here starting tomorrow. I'm going to be back at my regular office again. And I'll just, like I said, you'll see me doing updates basically every single day, still on this Right Every Day on both projects. But that's it. So that is my other project. That is the wrestling novel and my other one that I've been working on.